Hi everyone, this is James Toll, Adjunct Writing and Literature Instructor at GCC, and I've had a lot of success using screencasts to give feedback to my students, and I wanted to share some of my experiences with you. I'm not going to talk much about the technical aspects of screencasting, I think there are better videos for that, but I will talk about why you should consider using screencast feedback, as well as some best practices. And while this approach to feedback is most often useful for responding to written work, I think it could be modified and useful for any kind of feedback that you want to give on an assignment in an online or a hybrid setting. So why should you use screencast feedback? I like screencast feedback because it allows you to simulate a conversation with students about their work. My students have frequently commented that it's kind of similar to an asynchronous office hours appointment. Students can hear your voice and get a sense of your personality. And if you're using the picture-in-picture function, they can see you as you're discussing their work. Screencast feedback also allows students to see exactly which parts of their work you're referring to in your comments. And it also allows you to jump back and forth between their documents and other helpful materials like objectives, rubrics, or anything else that you might want to show them to help them with their work. And it just allows for a more personable and personal approach. In an online setting, I also feel that screencast feedback is really useful for us instructors as well. It reduces some of the distance that we can feel while teaching in an online setting by allowing us to use our voices instead of just the keyboard. And this is especially the case when synchronous delivery methods are not possible. I just want to talk through some best practices for giving screencast feedback to students. This is by no means an exhaustive list. But because you're talking directly to a student about their work, I find it really important to highlight the strengths of their work at some point in the presentation, either in a bracketing kind of format where you talk about the good things at the beginning and the end of your presentation, or just kind of woven throughout your screencast video. Critical feedback can also come across with more force when speaking to a student, and so that's something to be mindful of as well. But in general, I find that responding using your voice rather than the keyboard helps reduce the red pen syndrome that sometimes we find ourselves caught up in, where we're constantly focusing on what needs to be corrected rather than what is successful. One drawback of screencast feedback is that you're going to be making a lot of videos, right? But I want to say a couple things that might make this easier. One, the videos don't have to be perfect. They should be conversational and more informal than the lectures that you give, either in person or in video. And you can edit on most programs if necessary, but I find that excessive editing will really slow you down. So only use editing when necessary. And I also recommend having a general script that bookends your videos, like a brief introductory set of remarks and some concluding remarks that you want to make. I find that having a basic framework helps to keep me from rambling and helps me locate myself when I'm in the middle of a video. And it's also very helpful for me to take brief notes on student work before I create the video. I always make a few marginal comments in Canvas, on the written feedback function, just on the document itself, or Microsoft Word using track changes to help guide me through my feedback. And I often have notes both in the margins on their work and on a separate sheet of paper, so they can see the marginal notes and I can look and kind of orient myself with my notes as well. When preparing your videos, I would recommend focusing on 2 to 4 key takeaways that you want to communicate to the student. With screencast feedback, it's important not to get bogged down in the details. And a video in which you're line editing with your voice probably isn't going to be very helpful for the student anyway. And I think it's best to keep your videos short. Research says that videos in the 4 to 6 minute range are generally more successful as student attention dramatically wanes after that, right? So a 10-minute student feedback video probably wouldn't be ideal in this format. All right, I hope this helps. I hope I've convinced you to use screencast feedback or at least try it. And if you have any questions, look me up and reach out. Thank you.